We've heard a lot about France so far today, and so I'm very delighted to welcome our next speaker, who will tell us more about the ambitions that France has for the next AI Safety Summit. I'd like to welcome to the stage Henri Verdier, the French Ambassador for Digital Affairs and the Thematic Envoy for Global AI Governance.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. So I don't know about you, but personally, I really don't like when someone concludes a conference they haven't listened to. So I want to tell you that first, I do apologize. I'm coming from Paris. And then I was there for the last hour in the listening room, and I have heard a lot of interesting things we do share with you, and I do personally agree with, and some excellent suggestions for the Paris Summit. So I was there. I'm not just concluding. Yes, as you said, I'm Henri Verdier. I'm a former entrepreneur, a former head of the IT department for the French government, and now ambassador for digital affairs, and a member of the team appointed by President Macron to organize the next AI Summit in France. First of all, I would like to thank and congratulate my British colleagues from Number 10, DSIT, and FCDO for their tremendous work over the last year, from Bletchley Park to co-hosting the Seoul Summit, setting the tone, launching the first AI Safety Institute, keeping the momentum well alive following Bletchley. This way is now well paved for France, and for this I want to thank them and to say that we share the same commitment. I think we can all agree that artificial intelligence is not just one step further in the digital revolution. It is rather a paradigm shift for our societies. It will most likely transform the way we work, the way we learn. It could jeopardize our democracies. It can, and we hope, unleash innovation, accelerate sciences. The promises for sciences are amazing. Help us to achieve the sustainable development goals, etc. So let's recognize this. That's important too. Let's also recognize that it's a race to control power, and a race between companies, but also between nations and regional groupings, with a confrontation of some societal models. If we don't recognize it, we are being very naive about the new phenomena of domination and the risks for democracies. So in this context, our view is that we have to be prepared to face. So first, we recognize, as it was said in Bletchley Park and other places, that we have to be prepared to face the existential risks. This is one of our great responsibilities as governments, and in particular, we must ensure that in this current rush for leadership positions, companies invest as much in security as they do in efficiency. So that's a minimal need. But we must also face that, and it was said very clearly this morning, we must also face up the more everyday and already proven risks, because they are current risks that are there today and that we have to face. Bias, cybersecurity, the thief of intellectual property, the future of work, the human rights, etc. And so that's one of the first considerations we have for the French summit. We need to build upon Bletchley Park and to speak about existential risk, but we have to go further and to face the current and proven consequences of AI. We think that we must also strive for genuine use of AI for good, to stand for a desirable society, to encourage, for example, we'll try to open the room to exchange with a lot of creators, innovators, NGOs, small nation coalitions to see how we can use AI for the sustainable development goals. And we want to open the room for a positive conversation also about what we can hope and expect with this. And finally, and of course that's important for diplomats, we need to stand for coherent and effective global governance. So to make it simple, I don't think that there will be one unique body for AI governance, because probably like for the car industry, you have safety rules, you have rules to build the cars, you have what we name in France the code de la route, I don't know how you say, so for the drivers, you have to know how to build roads themselves. So, and I did count with my Swiss colleague from the European Council, for the car industry, we have more than 70 treaties, bodies, international organizations, 70. So probably for the AI, we'll also need to deal with research, with the safety, with the security, with how to control the uses, maybe a market regulation, maybe a policy regarding transparency, the data. So there won't be one unique body, but, and that's very important, we can conceive a shared governance, a shared global governance. And we, democracies, if we don't do this, if we let a fragmented governance of AI, we unlikely will be the lowest bidder, so we'll weaken our innovation streams because, so the answer is not to weaken our regulation, the answer is to fight for a global and shared governance of AI. How can we tackle those issues? First, and I'm very happy to say it, to say this today here in front of you, by being inclusive, first and foremost. And I'm very happy to see the diversity and the quality of these assistants. AI is mostly a political object. Sometimes I feel that that's also an anthropological shift, because we'll have to conceive differently the brain itself. When we'll discover that some of we did use human brains to make stupid stuff that machines can do, we'll have to reconsider the value of the work, the value of the dignity of individuals, etc. So that's a political shift, and any AI-related decision and discussions must be democratic, must include companies, academics, students, the youth, male, female, and everyone else in the process. So we'll try to push for inclusivity by design when it comes to AI. Secondly, the discussions must be set at the global stage in order to avoid more fragmentation. So I told you that we want to encourage a more integrated governance. I can testify that today that's not the case. So personally, as the French ambassador for digital affairs, I'm supposed to go to more than 13 international bodies to speak about AI regulation. So you can imagine EU, OECD, ITU, G7, G20, so that are tracks that can or diverge or harass the few experts we have that are constantly traveling everywhere, and that's inefficient. So we need to build the framework for a better and more global and broader governance. I can tell you also that for the Global South, they know what we have done when we did launch the Industrial Revolution. They don't want this again, and they want to be on the driver's seat. And that's a very strong conversation. So that's our second view. So inclusivity, broader conversation, and interoperability are two of our main ambitions. This is in this spirit that we are on the road of the AI Action Summit that will take place in France on February 10 and 11, 2025. I don't know if you have the dates. So President Macron did announce it officially 3 weeks ago. And I will just share a few words of the agenda just to engage you to join us and to work with us. So President Macron did announce the main organization. We will have a special envoy, Anne Bouvreau. She's both an academic and a businesswoman, so she has 2 foot in the 2 worlds, and 5 envoys, so I'm one of them. So the first, and we'll create working groups open to the civil society, to academics, as international as possible. So the first one will be obviously on AI safety, building on the Bletchley Park and Seoul tracks, as I mentioned. Would like the UK to play an instrumental role in this track. And we are embracing the main conclusion of the former summit. So I don't know if you know, but France is launching his own Center of Evaluation for AI, so our kind of safety institute. We consider this approach as very promising because that's a way to make the companies more accountable. So they do their decision. It could induce quite a flexible regulation. So the companies take their responsibilities, but they have to know what they are doing, and we can know what they knew. So that's an interesting framework. And so President Macron did announce the French Safety Institute that we call Evaluation Institute. And I'm pretty convinced that the French summit could be a milestone for the future network of safety institutes, because at this time we'll have 6 or 7 national safety institutes, and we could organize the first meeting of the safety institutes. Secondly, we'll deepen our work on innovation in order to make sure that our ecosystems can thrive and create tomorrow's best use of AI. So we don't want to forget the innovation stream. Third, we want to open a track regarding AI for the public interest, and that will be our third focus. This track aims at making AI more accessible and more democratic, and we feel that there is a need of a deep dive into data governance. This is not just about software, but there is a need of better understanding of data governance and maybe giving more concept or idea. There were interesting progresses recently regarding confidential computing, regarding open source, etc. We have to make the situation. We are also launching a working group on the future of work. We consider that that's one of the main immediate issue. It will jeopardize all of organizations. And we have 3 primary topics in mind: measuring the impact of AI at work, vocational training and inserting AI, vocational training and inserting AI in the social dialogue. We think that within the companies there is a need of real conversation in the social dialogue. And last but not least, we are setting up a track on AI international governance, which we want to be effective and inclusive. Earlier this month, President Macron did recall our vision for governance, which is to be based on science, because we need more science in those fora, solutions, and not just principles, and standards, and I have heard about this, because everyone wants to have the final word regarding the ethics of AI, for example, or big question, or existential risk. But we need a lot of very concrete standards for example, let's just think about the safety institutes. How can we compare the tests they will do? Do we have the same definition of the very nature of the risks? So we need a conversation between experts to try to normalize a bit, at least the vocabulary, maybe the minimum set of tests, etc. So we need now to open the field for this kind of work, and that's so science, solutions, and standards. And because, as I did mention, many organizations has put AI governance on their agenda, because I go to 13, but there are much more. So we will try to convince to factorize a bit, and for example, the French Global Partnership for AI will be installed in the OECD, so we are merging 2 initiatives. We hope that maybe the Hiroshima process could join this movement, and so if we have a bit few bodies, it will be much better for everyone. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I want to be brief to exchange if we have time. Thank you really for having us today. Thank you for having paved the way. And as I told you, we want to open as much as possible the preparation of the summit. We have 8 months, that's something. So the 5 working groups are open, and don't hesitate to contact me, but I'm not very often in France. My team, Arthur, are there. Stand up. Are there, completely dedicated to this track, and all the French embassy to participate, to contribute, and to join, to help us to continue this movement that was born in UK. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If there are any questions from the floor, if you can say who you are and where you're from and just be very, very concise, that would be great. Any questions for Henri? Yes, right there.
Thank you very much. I'm Dan Treacher from the Financial Conduct Authority. You mentioned that global alignment across all countries involved in AI is the ideal, and while I agree, I'm sure, as you know, there are countries which are kind of diverging from that. So I'm thinking about China and facial recognition, that sort of stuff. I was wondering if you could say some words on the diplomatic efforts to try and resolve those discrepancies.
Yes, they are, but again, I don't think that we could dream about one global treaty in the UN system. As you can see in Ukraine, for example, the problem with international law is law enforcement. So we cannot afford just promises. But if you separate the topics, for example, we can easily agree about the description of some tests and to be able to compare the results of tests. That's what we do in the ISO, for example. We can do this for many industries. We can open a vibrant discussion about ethics of AI, and we need to. So global ethics. I don't know if I have 1 minute for something funny I've learned. So you all in this room, you all know the very famous example of the autonomous car that will have to decide if it saves the baby or the grandmother in front of the... But do you know that there is a huge ethical divide between Europe and Asia? And is that in most Asian countries, they say, obviously, we need to save the grandmother because this is wisdom, social order. And in Europe, most people say, obviously, we need to save the baby. So there are also collective preferences that we have to exchange together about. We can also, in other rooms, speak about arms regulation, for example. So if we divide the topic, but not like today, because today, just every organization say, I have a track on AI governance. So the topic is divided in silos between organizations. We need to divide it in silos between questions, and some are very precise and technical, some are very philosophical, and we can exchange. Some are more complex, of course, and, but I think that we will make progresses. We have to, and that's why the international system is built for.
Thank you so much, Henri. Will you please join me in thanking Henri Verdier, Ambassador for Digital Affairs in France. Right. Well, I would like to warmly thank all of our panelists and our speakers this morning. They've covered a load of ground. And I would also like to thank all of you, our audience members, for being with us here today. Given the transformational power of artificial intelligence and its potential, as many of the speakers have mentioned today, it's incredibly important and valuable to convene these discussions with a broad range of people and perspectives. Although this concludes today's events, the AI Fringe will return when the AI Safety Summit moves to France next year. If you enjoyed today's conversation and you want to be a part of this community, please sign up to our mailing list via our website, aifringe.org, for updates on our plans for France and indeed our other activities during the year. Now, just a very quick number of thank yous. It's taken a large number of people to put on this event today. I'd like to say thanks to my colleagues at Milltown Partners, to Bureau, our design partner, and to the Next Economy Trust for bringing this all to life. And most of all, we would like to thank, again, all of you for being here for such a significant occasion. Again, please stay in touch. Get in touch via our website, speak to any of us here. We'll be very happy to chat with you about what's transpired today and indeed our plans for the future. And although we said, or I said at the start, that we consider the Knowledge Center at the British Library our home, we are in a time limit in this space. So if you can please move with purpose, have discussions, but move with purpose outside of the building, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much and enjoy your afternoon.